Welcome, my dear friends. I am starstruck to see you. In case we haven't met before, I'm Stephen Clements, a writer, a gamer, and an appreciator of big brain activities in general. On this channel, I perform dramatic story readings, I provide role-playing game and movie reviews, and I get to talk to interesting people, which exactly is what I'm going to be doing right now. In this episode, we've got actor, director, and ramen aficionado Jeff Gorcyca, who we first encountered at the HP Lovecraft Film Festival 2023 in episode 4 if you want to go back and check out his short film, Don't Bother the Neighbors. We talk about everything, acting, directing, inspiration, the state of Hollywood, and about giant mushrooms falling from the sky. I hope you enjoy this interview as much as I enjoyed having it. Welcome, my dear friends. Today we're going to be talking to another interesting person that I've found out about, and that y'all found out about too from episode 4 of my reviews of HP Lovecraft Film Festival, the one in Mobile, Alabama that I went to. He's a director of Don't Bother the Neighbors, that short film that I love so much. So my dear friends, meet new dear friend, Jeff Gorcyca. Jeff, how you doing, man?
Hey, I am good. Thank you for having me today.
Man, I'm stoked. So just to make sure the folks at home know what we're dealing with here, there's a term, I believe it's a triple threat, where a person is a writer, director, producer, or singer, songwriter, you know, some combination of those things. So Jeff here, he's got quite the list of threats that he can pose. Actor, writer, director, singer, YouTuber, gamer, even juggler. So hide your wife, hide your daughters around this, hide whatever you got. So he's a man of many talents, and we got a lot to talk about. Now, there's two reasons that got me most interested to extend the invite to you, and I'm very happy you accepted, is that, one, of course, I liked your short film. I wanted to find out more about what went into that, what your process is. But two, and the questions we're going to come to later are going to reflect this, that so far I've interviewed graphic artists and role-playing game designers, the writers, that kind of people, because I'm interested in what they do. But in doing my research on Don't Bother the Neighbors and you, with your experience in putting points on the board in the film industry, I wanted to know what that was like, because you're doing all kinds of stuff. And so what is it like to be someone in your position? What did it take for you to get there? Where are you going from here? Does it suck? Is it amazing? All that kind of stuff. But my first question, Girl Soup, that's the production company you're affiliated with. What is that? Who picked that name? Girl Soup.
We get that question all the time. So Girl Soup is our creative team of 6 friends and professionals and collaborators. A few of us met in grad school. One of us was dating someone who ended up working with us. One of us was just a really good friend and a really good fit to the team. And we found that through the 6 of us, we each had very distinct strengths, whether it was acting. One of us is a playwright and now screenwriter. One of us is a fantastic cameraman and editor. One of us is an incredible special effects and makeup person. One of us is a director. And so we started to realize, just with this natural group of friends, that we were friends already in our everyday lives, that we could just start making our own projects. And so Girl Soup has become this sort of collective where we go, what do you want to do? Let's make it happen in any way. And I will say what's also been really cool, because you mentioned, Jeff, you're jumping around. Now you're producing a film. Now you directed a short film. That has come around through Girl Soup also being very open to us all being like, so what do you want to do on the next project? Do you want to try sound design? Do you want to try Foley? What you can handle Foley if you want, or directing in my case for Don't Bother the Neighbors. So there's no like hard and fast rules with who does what in Girl Soup. It really is just like, let's learn this industry, let's get our feet wet. And we've been really happy with what we've produced so far. So that's Girl Soup in a nutshell, the best that I can explain it.
So let me get this straight. You're a group of friends that wanted to do something, and y'all actually are doing it. You didn't just talk about it. You didn't just have some beer or some whatever and say, yeah, we should do this, and then nobody ever does it, and eventually nothing ever happens. Y'all are actually making it happen. Oh,
that is technically true. Yes.
Oh, I love that so much. So you highlighted that each of you had a particular strength. Which one did you start with?
I was one of our actors and kind of dabbled in writing like a short film script. Our very first project is this short film that we do not make public because it just didn't turn out the way that we wanted. Like, we love it for how silly and fun it is, but when we watch it now, like, it was shot on an iPhone, the sound is all ADR, and we're just like, maybe this one's just for us. But the passion behind it and us working together and having fun with it, I still love the movie because of that. Anyways, I bring up this short film only because these friends in school at Pace University, and we were getting near to graduation. We were like, what are we going to do when we graduate? And I was like, I have this idea for maybe a series of skits that could star the same characters. And my one other friend, who is Ray in Girl Soup, and he starred in Don't Bother the Neighbors, he was like, I got a better idea. Turn it into a short film. I'm going to get Chelsea to direct. I'm going to get Julia, the playwright, to take a look at it. And let's just film this thing. And I was like, okay. And from that energy, so it truly was Raymond's energy that kind of just was like, we're going to do this thing. We got our first project going, and we loved working together so much. That was what got the ball rolling. And you've seen the other projects we've done since.
That's really awesome. All you folks out there that want to write a book or want to make this or want to do that, that only happens because you do it. And here's proof that you can do that. There was a whole group of people that do that. I do it myself. Get off their butt, do the work. So that's inspirational. I'm glad you are doing that. But you talked about that movie, that short film you made. What's it called and what's it about?
It's the very first film we ever made.
Yeah.
Was called Stretch. And the idea, I'll tell the plot. I don't mind telling the plot. It's just the film that maybe will never be shown. But the idea was, two friends, one is visiting New York. They go up to the roof because this one friend, it's his apartment. He's like, this roof is so awesome. You got to check out the view of New York. It's so cool up here. When they go up there, they check it out and they almost instantly get locked up there. So now they have these harebrained schemes. They're terrible schemes of trying to get off the roof. None of them work. But again, we're playing off this idea of it being stretched. Their relationship is stretched. Their friendship is stretched. There's also this old, I guess one friend had taken his friend's Stretch Armstrong doll and had destroyed it. That was all part of it. So like that came to light too. And so there was this confrontation about his Stretch Armstrong doll. But at the end, they kind of mend ways and they go up to the door. And of course, it's a pull door, not a push door. So they weren't locked up there the whole time. So you can already see, Stephen, like this is kind of the tone of our films. And I'll throw one more small tidbit of just like fun Girl Soup trivia your way. Technically, we tried to connect all of our short films. So that character of Jay, which is Raymond, is also Jay in Don't Bother the Neighbors. We even threw a little picture of these characters, Seth and Jay from Stretch, up on the refrigerator in Don't Bother the Neighbors. So we're trying to do this Stephen King universe thing going on.
So there's a Girl Soup-averse.
The Girl Soup-averse.
It actually exists.
It technically does, yes.
Okay, and while you might look back at Stretch with a feeling of cringe of the production value of it, when I see YouTubers that they look back at their old episodes and they cringe and like, oh, how did anybody watch that? And then they delete them, they take them down. Well, people started watching you for a reason. Leave the thing there. Let it be a testament to where you started, where you came to. So I'm going to ask, and you can say no if you want, but that you put it somewhere. You could put up a title card with a disclaimer saying this was the first thing we did. Be kind to it, understand it. But that sounds creative and it sounds funny. And I'd like to see it just for sake of completionism, if nothing else.
Yeah. You know what? I think I actually agree with you. It should be a testament to what at that point only four of us did with just an iPhone and an idea. We still completed it, came to fruition. But yeah, it is funny to look at where it was and where we are now. That is a little bit of a journey for sure.
Well, I'll keep an eye on your channel to see if that pops up at some point. And so, as I covered in the intro, my first exposure to your work was the 2023 HP Lovecraft Film Festival in Mobile, Alabama, near close to my home in Pensacola, Florida, when I saw Don't Bother the Neighbors. And just a very quick recap for those who haven't seen my review. This is Lovecraft Kung Fury, basically. It's awesome. It's funny. The action's hysterical. It's well shot. I mean, just everything about it was good, and that's why I gave it a good review. But I'm curious, and learning about what it is to be in your world, how did you get into that film festival? What's it like to do film festivals?
My first exposure to that whole scene was with Let's Leave the Planet, which was our short film just prior to Don't Bother the Neighbors. Actually, only 1 year before. So we've been trying to pump them out. You know, you essentially you film your short, you get it all done, and then you simply apply to these festivals and cross your fingers. You don't get into all of them. That's one thing that I think the first round, at first I took personally. I was like, but this is our masterpiece. Of Let's Leave the Planet. Like, there's aliens. What's not to love? This is a great short film. But I think it was actually a bit of a learning experience to do that first year of festivals. And I realized that festivals are choosing our film based on a theme, not whether it's good or bad. So here's a great example. In Let's Leave the Planet, there's a very distinctive shot of the moon. Like, it's clear this is the moon. And we went to one festival. We didn't know this going in, but when we got there, they announced that the theme of the year was the moon. And all of the short films, and they were eclectic. They were not all sci-fi or comedy or anything. They all featured the moon in some way. And it dawned on me on that festival, I was like, this is probably more of a theme in other festivals than I thought. Whether, there certainly are festivals that maybe lean more towards dramatic or Oscar-worthy short films or something like that. But then there's some that are just as simple as, we saw the moon, or our theme was the moon, and your short had the moon in it. And so you got in. And we realized, okay, so let's put aside any insecurity of whether our short is good or not. This is kind of how this scene works. So with Don't Bother the Neighbors, to bring it back to your question, when we went into the festival scene this year, we were hyper-focused. And we are still hyper-focused when we apply. It's not just general, we throw it into Manhattan International Film Festival and all that, because what we're looking for now is, where is there a theme, or where is there something that this fills a specific niche that this festival is looking for? So we applied to a creature feature film festival, which is a very distinctive creature monster in our short film. Obviously, well before I even was hunting the festival scene, I remember talking to the Girl Soup team, and I was like, we got to find anything that's Lovecraftian, anything that's cosmic horror. That is what inspired me in this film. It is that genre. So instead of like a broad sci-fi festival, like finding the HP Lovecraft Film Festival, I think was in our favor for that short. So that's how we've tackled getting our short seen. And I'll just give kind of broad advice to anyone who's applying for these film festivals, because they can start to get expensive. Really think about like what specific themes are in your short and find a festival that matches that, rather than the broad stroke, I'm going to throw it into 50 festivals and just cross my fingers,
That's really good advice. And so when you're looking for festivals, is there a website that compiles all the different festivals and what they're looking for? Or do you just have to go beat the bushes until you find it?
There is filmfreeway.com for that. Very reputable website for film festivals. But we have also gone the route of, we'll seek out a venue, or sometimes they'll contact you as well. We got contacted by a very reputable film festival that we actually ended up getting into, and it's the Philip K. Dick Film Festival, and that's coming up in just about a month. So yeah, we're so excited about that. But they ended up reaching out to us. They were like, we've heard about your short. Would you like to apply? So I would say the standard route is to check out filmfreeway.com, but then also nothing wrong with just going to the official websites and applying through their means as well.
That's fantastic. And for writers out there, I use horrortree.com. It says Horror Tree, but it's these people that aggregate all the calls for short stories, novellas, whatever, put the key details, the announcements in it, and I've gotten 4 or 5 short stories published out of that. So yeah, you just go through and pick, what do you want to write about? And then you can just go with that. So there's 2 different ways. If you're making films, he's got you. If you're writing anything literary, horrortree.com. And so do you have to pay to apply for these things? Do you get paid for being accepted? Does money come into it like that?
I have seen, I think every single festival has at least a small fee. The smallest I think would be like $10 to submit. And the most expensive that I've seen, just in what I've been searching and scouring the internet for, would be like $75. So that's the range of what you might see for a festival, which is also why for this round, we really wanted to hyper target what we were applying to, so as to not just throw $20 to the Los Angeles Film Festival. All right, yeah, it would be wonderful to get in there, but we have a strength in being so targeted. So maybe applying to like, and here's another example of one we got into. There was like a martial arts film festival in Rehoboth Beach, and we did get into that. So it's like, you got to kind of play to your themes, I think, a little bit.
That's cool. That's good to know. Now, have you been at any of these film festivals while one of the movies that you were in are being screened? Like, have you been in the audience and watched it?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
From having talked to a couple actors before, one that was at the theater I was at doing the screening, and he said that he's usually uncomfortable sitting in the audience while people are watching him do his thing, but he was going to try to do it. So he sat in a seat in the front row for a few minutes, and the nerves just got to him. He was like, I can't do it. I can't do it. And he got up and went out to the bar. Are you cool sitting there with all these people watching you, mentally criticizing your every move and look and piece of stubble, or are you not? What's your approach to that?
I will say, the very first time I saw myself in a movie theater, I was kind of mortified and uncomfortable. That did arrive for me, and I was just like, oh no. I was like, there I am. There's our film. I hope people like it. But since that first time, that has kind of left me, and I can just be proud of my film, be proud of my work, and I can watch myself on almost as a viewer, and I just enjoy the short. And I've heard these stories of like Johnny Depp never watching himself act and stuff like that, but I've come around to it because, you know, in Girl Soup, like I've had to edit myself acting and had to edit sound design of myself, and all my friends too, our coworkers and other actors. And it really starts to become like, it's all just a piece of the puzzle to tell the story. So it's not, doesn't fall on me as the actor to be good or bad. It's like, let's look at this project, and now I'm going to show you the project, rather than, oh, there's Jeff on the screen. It really is Andy in Let's Leave the Planet, for example, but also my sound design is there, which I'm very proud of. So I like to listen for like Foley that I did, things like that. So it's more of an experience of me just enjoying the project now, rather than, oh God, that is my face up there.
That's good. I would prefer that approach to one time I was listening to Sting, the musician, talk to Larry King. So that's, you know, how old I am. And Larry King asked him, do you listen to music? And he said, no, I can't, because I can't get my mind out of the technical analysis aspect of listening to the music. So you can't turn it off. And like when I'm reading something, I'll grab a pencil and I'll put a comma, I'll fix this, I'll fix that. I can't stop editing other people's stuff or even my own, but I can still enjoy it. So that's okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you get into a film festival. What's the payoff for you? Is it just the exposure, or is there something else? How does this help you to get into them?
It is the best way to network for not only the immediate project that you're showcasing or yourself as a filmmaker, and I've met wonderful filmmakers at these film festivals, but I've also found, and we consciously kind of thought of this with Don't Bother the Neighbors. If you start meeting these film festival curators for your next project that's coming up, there's always a conversation about what's coming up, both in like a Q&A, but also like at the bar too. And there's then an opportunity to be like, oh, we would love to showcase your next project coming up. And we do have a feature film as our next project after Don't Bother the Neighbors. It has its full run, and that's called Out in the Light. Here's just a great example. We mentioned that to the HP Lovecraft Film Festival, and they also curate the Portland Horror Film Festival. And they were like, send that to us. We'd be interested in checking that out. That is what I've noticed is the payoff of film festivals. It's all about that networking side. And then also meeting, you know, someone like you, Stephen, who's just a fan and just is like, let's just chat film for a second. Let me chat this world. It's all part of when you get into a film festival. You know,
that's incredibly valuable. Everything you just talked about, because you get the exposure and then you get to meet people, and maybe those people help you do things you need to do in the future. And that's fantastic. So I've seen Don't Bother the Neighbors won Best Grindhouse Film at Grindhouse Nights Film Festival and Best of the Fest at Strange Days Horror Fest. So, well, one, congratulations. That's great.
Thank you.
And what is it like winning film festival awards? Do you get like a crown, free pony rides, a big like golden clock to wear around your neck? What do you get?
I wish. Yeah, it's like a film reel instead of a clock, you know?
Okay. That's still cool.
Yeah, yeah. First, I want to say it's like absolutely bananas that we've won anything. I know everyone says this, but it's like I never win anything in my life. And even when I made Don't Bother the Neighbors and I was finally finishing editing and everything, I asked Michael and Julia, other Girl Soup team members, is anyone going to like this? Is this bad? I had such insecurity about it. They truly had to be that voice in the room that was like, Jeff, it's great. Stop. People are going to dig it, especially if they dig the genre. And I was like, okay, you're right. So then going to Grindhouse Nights Film Festival, and I actually traveled over there. Crossroads was the name of the bar. I think it was in Garwood, New Jersey. And I watched a slew of short films there that were all these midnight movie love letters, whether they were hyper violent or just weird and experimental, you know, because they don't all have to go violent, you know what I mean, in that genre, like more in the world of like Eraserhead, where just like weird stuff is happening. And I was watching them all and I was just like, this is where this film belongs. There still is fans of this kind of genre where clearly a bunch of friends made this, they thought it was awesome, and then they put it out to the world. And I was like, this is what this festival is. And again, sorry, now I just want to like share just one more thing about the Grindhouse Nights Film Festival, because they were so kind.
We're here to listen to you.
Oh, thank you. The curator, after Don't Bother the Neighbors played, and I believe one other short played, so it was back to back, we closed the festival. He came up on stage and he was like, those last two shorts, guys, that is why I made this festival. I love midnight movies. These movies are love letters to the 80s, when I used to, like, in New York, go to Times Square and see movies like this. And I'm sitting in the audience. I was like, we found our audience. We were so happy. And so for them to give us that award was incredibly cool. Yeah.
I'm even more happy for you now that you won it, that you got that sizzle to your victory steak.
It was really cool.
Because I could feel that in my heart, because I'm a big fan of that type of movie too. I always have been. And my wife, she's extensively versed in film and literature, but if production values aren't to a certain level, she's not going to like it. Whereas I am incredibly forgiving. The production values could be the worst in the world, but as long as I can see that creative spark, that passion, I don't care what it looks like or how bad the acting is, I can enjoy what it's giving me. And yes, I think a lot of people miss things that they might enjoy because it's not as shiny or it's not as high res, whatever. But listening to you talk, you prompted a question in me. Where do you fall on the spectrum of designing a film for an audience, or do you think this is a cool idea and the right people are going to get it? Where are you going with that?
Oh, man. Inevitably, I think you have to consider both, right? So I'm not the root of, I think it's Rick Rubin, who says it should only be about your personal love of a project. Forget the audience completely. Okay, that is definitely one philosophy. Then I think there's the Disney approach, which is like, we want as many people to love this as possible. You know what? Also valid. I think with me personally and how I approached Don't Bother the Neighbors, and also Let's Leave the Planet as well, I wanted to make sure things like, for example, the sound was as good as I could possibly get it. I've been to many film festivals now, and I've had a film just be a notch less because the sound wasn't there. You know what I mean? I can't think of any examples off the top of my head. I'm not here to call anyone out, but I'm just saying that if the sound is like just one notch down from just being this level that's just pleasing, if I'll call it that, the film just suffers a little bit. So inevitably, I did go in and meticulously look at levels, watch YouTube videos on proper way to mix sound, went back multiple passes for like mixing the levels of our background music in Don't Bother the Neighbors. Inevitably, I'm thinking about the audience at all times in that aspect. But as far as the story I wanted to tell, as far as does our tentacle look real? Like, does it look like Marvel movies? I said, no, I don't.
Spoiler, there's a tentacle.
There's a tentacle and Don't Bother the Neighbors. That is not why I would hope you enjoy our film. I hope that you think our actor did a great performance and our fight scene was awesome. I hope you loved our lighting. Now I'm talking about the audience again. I should say that I loved all of those things, like personally, like that is me put to screen without acting. You know what I mean? That's how my brain works. So in that part, in that way, that's where the insecurity came up when I'm like talking to Michael and Julia and I'm like, oh no, is this good? Because I love it. I don't know if anyone else will. So it is a balancing act between the two, between truly, I made this for myself, and I want this to play in a theater, and I don't want anyone to walk out because of sound or because of something more technical like that.
Yeah, some relatively minor but still important detail to the overall picture. And that is the biggest problem I've seen in both big budget movies and low budget movies, independent short films, whatever, is I can't understand what they're saying. And I have great hearing, but if your soundtrack is up here and your dialogue's down here, what are you doing?
Nailed it. You know, this goes back to acting school a little bit, but I had a teacher who was like, you know, you could be doing the most wonderful acting work in the world, but if they can't hear you in the back row, it doesn't matter if you were Heath Ledger on that day. It does not matter. So there has to be an awareness of, okay, I'm going to act for this person on stage, but I'm going to have my voice technically loud enough for someone in the back to hear me. And I think that actually bleeds into how I approach these films now that I'm mulling it over a little bit.
Right. Now, you've made a bunch of stuff on your own on your YouTube channel that I've been checking out. And so on those videos, are you the one-man band doing all the recording, all the editing, all the acting, all the writing?
Oh, yeah. Inevitably, like many YouTube creators, you have to do it all until maybe one day, if my channel ever got really large, I could hire an editor and maybe delineate some of that work to someone else. But yeah, that is all me learning anything from, again, sound design there to editing and stuff like that. But some of the skills I've learned in that world, the YouTube world, I've dabbled on TikTok too a little bit. What makes a really engaging 15-second video can also be taken to 15 seconds in your feature film. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can take
The
some of
skills are
the
transferable.
yes, the
portable.
engagement of scenes, how to keep someone watching your scene can travel from TikTok world to like a longer form feature film, I've noticed. So that's helped me with the editing for Out in the Light, which is coming up.
And prepping for this interview, I went through your YouTube channel and I watched some of your multi-minute videos, and I discovered your shorts today, particularly your imitation of Snape working at working at a grocery store or
Yes.
doing advertisements. Y'all need to go check this guy's shorts out. They're hysterical. But even your commercials, and I'm pretty sure some of those you clearly were getting paid to do, but some of those look like spoofs you made, like your whiskey one. Oh man, I howled. I howled when you took that sip. I'll post a link to that one specifically in the description below. Y'all need to see this thing.
Oh, thank you.
And my wife could hear me cackling from clear across the house. I had to go let her know I'm okay. I'm just watching Jeff's stuff, and it's good. But
Yeah.
on your channel, you've got a variety of things. You got live plays for video games, you got acting bits, commercials you've done. What made you decide that you wanted to go with a variety of videos instead of just one single type every single time?
Yes, I've struggled with that a little bit as a creator too, because I know that YouTube rewards hyper-focused channels. So I had to come back to, what do I enjoy? What makes me excited? And I'm not really going to worry about the algorithm, not going to worry about amassing a million follower audience for now, at least. What just gets me passionate about sharing projects on YouTube? And I started to realize I love throwing up a video of me juggling. This is a new trick I learned. I love doing impressions. I want to try some of this deepfake software just to see if I can throw together an impression that could make someone laugh. Great. I also love video games. I'm very passionate about that. I've seen streamers play a video game that they love. It's not about views. It's like an old game from the 90s or something. I wanted to do that. I did start to realize my channel is super eclectic. That probably makes it not for everybody. I'm going to be completely honest, because it's like not just the video game channel. But on the flip side, I also think that it very much reflects me as an individual and what I'm into. And the following that I have amassed there loves when I post a commercial or loves when I post a juggling video. I can see it in the comments. So for right now, for what I'm trying to get out of YouTube, I think that the eclectic approach more reflects me as a creator, rather than like trying to become the next PewDiePie or whoever, you know, these famous video game
Mr.
streamers.
Beast.
Who's hyper-focused.
Speaking of commercials, the one you did for that university in Delaware, they completely did you dirty, saying that they weren't going to give you a degree in juggling because you were clearly skilled at doing it. It's not something you just do with no training.
Listen, I would argue I got a job in a commercial juggling, so I would argue that it is a direct route to a job. Why is there not a degree in juggling?
And even though you have a variety of content formats, there is a unifying principle of humor in all of them. I just got to wonder, for like the commercials that you were clearly hired to do, did you have some input on the direction that it took? Because the one you did for the shoes, that was hysterical. Or were they just that funny and you were the right guy for that role?
That commercial in particular, that's probably my favorite commercial that I've been in. A lot of it was scripted, but they also left room after each take. They were like, Jeff, just improv, just goof around. What's a line you want to say? How do you want to do this? Do you want to laugh? It was such a warm set. And I think sometimes in commercials that can be lost because there is a time limit for many commercials. They really want to get the take and they want to move on. But for that specific commercial, it's shot over 1 week. They gave themselves a lot of time to play. Oh, yeah. They were telling me a little about the screening process. For that shoe commercial, they had flown me out to Salt Lake City, Utah, was actually where that one shot. And they worked on it for a full week. They really budgeted the time to do the script, but then left it open for improv. So for that specific commercial, there's a lot of just like my own personal take on little moments or things that I personally found funny. Yeah. I just dig that project a lot. I think that was where like corporate and creativity met and something awesome was made. You know what I mean?
So do you suspect that somebody at that shoe company is in fact an aspiring director and they wanted to make the best dang commercial they could make? It worked because after I got done watching it, I went to the website. I checked it out.
You're like, I gotta check out these shoes. This is actually, these seem like they have some merit here.
Mhm.
I actually do think you might be onto something because I know that it was directed by this first time director and her name was Mandy. And after that commercial, she went off and I think started doing music videos. Again, it's been a few years since I caught up with her, but I think she was trying to get together her own feature film last I was in contact with this girl. So I do think you're right that this was kind of like, I want to give this project my mark, even though it's commercial, even though, we're trying to sell something, but can we also make it funny and get really great casting and have improv and all that too? So I actually think you're onto something there.
Yeah, there's no part and there's no piece that you can make that's too small to do a great job, because there's
Nailed
plenty
it.
of bad commercials out there, but that one I'm going to remember. And yeah, I'm going to put the link in the description so y'all can check it out yourself. It is worth the watch.
Yeah.
It's like 2.5 minutes. It's a short film with like a story arc and all kinds of stuff. It's a quality product for a
Yeah.
shoe commercial.
I know it's wild. It's a great little ad. Yeah.
While we're on the topic of commercials, is there a favorite one that you've done? Was that it? The one you had the most fun on the set of?
As far as most fun on the set, it was that shoe commercial. I think that reads on screen. But believe it or not, if I had to name my favorite commercial, I was in a Wawa commercial. And anyone who knows what Wawa is, I'm from the Philadelphia area. If you know someone in a Wawa commercial, it's like they've made it. If you're from the tri-state area of like New Jersey, Philly, Maryland. So it's so funny. I've said that I was in this Wawa commercial to people who are from LA. They're like, what is a Wawa? What are you talking about?
It's a
And
gas
then I've
station. It's a fancy gas station.
it's a fancy gas station. But it has a surprisingly passionate fan base. Here's an example of, I'll call it local celebrity that ad gave me, if you want to call it that. But I went in for an audition for a theater. I auditioned. I was all done. It was for a musical, and then the casting director was like, "Hey man, saw your Wawa ad, dude." It's like I was like in for theater, like something completely different. But just like people in Philadelphia had seen the ad and knew that I was in it, so just thought it was funny.
Well, you were good in the ad. It was very memorable, even though it was
Oh,
very short. Your delivery, your comedic timing was perfect.
oh, thank you, thank you.
And
I am proud of that one too. Turned out good.
and you were not kidding. The folks that know about Wawa and go there, they are a dedicated bunch. Like there's a political commentator I follow all the time, Jack Posobiec. He won't shut up about how many times he goes to Wawa. And
Yeah,
I've been to
totally.
one myself, and they are nice.
They're
Uh,
nice. I think
those in
Johnny
Maryland.
Knoxville has a Wawa tattoo, if I'm remembering correctly. Like there's this strange passion for Wawa. I can't explain it.
So getting into a commercial, what is that like? You're an actor, you're ready to go. Say you're not a big name, so the Japanese aren't going to spend $1 million to fly you out to talk to an animated turtle. If you're any other actor, how do you go through that? Is it the same as any other acting performance?
So specifically for getting cast, is that
Yeah.
what you're trying to tackle? Yeah. When I first graduated school, I went onto the website Actors Access, which is well known with actors who especially first starting out, and just started applying to any short films and commercials that I saw on there. And I was lucky enough to actually book, I think, one or two through that. So that was just through what I'll call a blind submission. I don't know the casting director. I don't have any in, but I just put out a tape to these folks. From there, it was always on the back burner. I was like, I really need to get an agent, someone who knows my type, who knows me personally, knows what I would be good in, and is sending me in and kind of getting me essentially to the front of the line for these commercials or other projects that I would be really good in. So it was in, I think, 2017, I got my first agent and I had found success with them. Then this was just me in the natural hustle of, I guess, kind of how I'm treating this industry. I was like, okay, so this is great. Can I then potentially apply to a bigger agency and just have some of my work be used as, hey, this is my resume. This is what I'm capable of. And that's kind of exactly what happened. I applied to a slightly bigger agency. They're one I'm still with now. Through them, I've booked a lot of the stuff that you've probably checked out on the YouTube page, like a job with Amazon and a job with the Wawa job, for instance. But they've also been great in that they've gotten me television work as well. To wrap up that question, it's going a little long-winded, but now I have an agent who knows me, knows my type, knows what I'm interested in, has seen my knack for comedy, for what I would be particularly good in, and they target auditions that they think I'd be really excellent in. So because of that, I do think that the ratio of booking has just gone up a little bit because they're just getting me in front of the right projects. You know what I mean?
Matching the right requirement with the right supplier,
It is
making
that.
making the bridge between them. That's great. So is YouTube the best place for people to see the most of your stuff? Or do you have any other social media channels they might check out?
I think it depends what you'd be interested in checking out. I have a website that really is just strictly professional, and you can see professional headshots there, and I do post my commercials there as well. So that's jeffgorcycaactor.com. But YouTube is very eclectic, as you saw. So if you're like, yeah, I just want to see Jeff, maybe he'll play Super Mario one night, but then I can also check out a commercial, then maybe YouTube for that. Then I also treat Instagram kind of in that eclectic way as well, but maybe leaning a bit more professional now that I think about it. Because if I ever get something like a modeling job, I'll be sure to put that there rather than, there's no video content for that for YouTube. So Instagram kind of lives in that. This is my kind of living resume is kind of how I treat Instagram.
Okay, that makes sense. In case you hadn't heard of it, there's a rival of YouTube. It's much smaller, but it's growing, called Rumble, that I get 50% more views on an average video over there. And their monetization is so much easier. They don't have all those barriers to monetization that YouTube has.
Yes.
If you get the clicks, you get the dollars. And
that's great.
Yeah, Rumble, rumble.com. They're a big free speech advocate. So the chances of them for no reason whatsoever just content striking you or shadow banning you doesn't happen. That's not what they're about.
Oh, cool.
So I'd suggest you check that out if you got the extra bandwidth.
Yeah.
And speaking of acting, how'd you get into it in the first place?
My journey with acting, I guess, started when I was probably in about 7th or 8th grade. I always had a knack for music. I grew up singing and I grew up playing like piano. I was in choir in 7th grade. And my teacher, she's one of those teachers. Her name is Kelly Klein. And she was just someone who saw a lot in me and was like, you have a knack for being silly. You have a knack for your energy. Let's put that into a school play. I think you'd be great in it. And I really do cite that first time on stage under her direction is when I was like, I love this. This is not a chore. This is not, oh God, I gotta go to acting rehearsal. I was just like, this is so fun. And I do think that's where it started, where it was like bubbling that like, I really love this. I started watching movies differently kind of ever since I started doing the school plays. I was like, oh, could I do that performance? How could I get to that spot? But I will say I had cold feet about pursuing acting professionally, as many people do, maybe rightfully so, because in my undergraduate path that I took, I studied communications with an emphasis in broadcasting and advertising. I was kind of going to go into that route. When I graduated, I got a job at a top 40 station for radio, and I worked there for 3 years. That was my path in my early 20s, like 21 through 24. I remember by the end of my tenure in radio, I just was like, I'm not telling stories. This isn't like, wow, this is very fun. This is very cool. It's not hitting that itch in my brain where I want to create something new. I'm showcasing other artists' work as a radio host, which has value. Don't get me wrong. But, now that you've seen my work, you're like, if this is the guy who made the Tentacle movie, of course he's not going to have a deep passion for top 40 radio. So I remember it was kind of when I was like, oh man, I've always loved this since I was a little kid. Maybe I could go back and study this. So I did end up going back to school at Pace University and met my collaborators. And I'm very happy to say that now I think it's been 7 years since we graduated. We're still working together. And obviously Girl Soup is production team now.
Well, shout out to Miss Klein.
Yeah, for real.
It's important for older folks, adults, people with any experience to offer encouragement to the people that have the potential, because those are the next ones up the ladder after you, and hopefully they'll even exceed what you're able to do. So that's fantastic. Just a little bit of encouragement can make such a difference.
I know.
And so what was that first part?
I remember it. It was a very small musical called The Castaways. And it was kind of this ragtag group of, kind of in the vein of like the Newsies, if I'm remembering this musical correctly. And I was just one of the rambunctious kids in this. But that was like the first any kind of acting I did, that small little musical.
So was part of what hooked you into wanting to pursue this further, even if it took a little while for you to really bite into it, was it that kind of performance high you get from performing live?
I think that's part of it. I'd be lying if I said it was truly 100% about the craft. It is also about, I hit that beat, I felt the audience either take a moment or laugh. I'm absolutely addicted to hitting a proper comedic moment and then hearing a roar from the audience. But what I will say is I have grown a little past that a little bit. Now, I'll even say it a lot in a way, which mirrors what I was saying where I was like, I can watch myself on screen, but now I'm interested in sound design. Now I'm interested in color correction. I'm interested in Foley, what makes a good edit? And so it's kind of become this thing where it may have started in this sort of, I love the validation of an audience. Now it's, I want to make this project. We started from an idea and now here it exists for everyone to see. That's kind of the adult Jeff version of what I'm seeking, I think.
And you want it to be the most entertaining it can be and the most technically proficient it can be, so it can excel in excellence in a number of ways. I
Ideally.
get it.
Yeah.
I get it. And so you're a great person to ask, since you saw both sides of this experience. What is it like to go to a acting school? Because you went to the Actors Studio Drama School at Pace University, like you mentioned. You got your Master's of Fine Arts in that. But before that, you did a more ordinary type of undergrad that more people would probably have an experience with. But I imagine fewer people have an experience with an acting school. What is that like, being in an acting school?
They call it drama school for a reason, Stephen. There's a lot of drama at drama school. I'll give you a very serious answer where I'll tell you some quick pluses and some quick minuses real quick. The pluses are, you are encouraged to fail, to try new things, to be bad, but did you make a big choice to be vulnerable in front of your peers? And that is all stuff that just in my normal everyday life, I'm not trying to be super vulnerable or private in public or bring life to text. So it really was this creative hub where every day we were exploring new things, exploring movement, exploring voice work, and not necessarily singing, but just like, what is it to speak in different registers from your chest or maybe up here in your nose and all up there? How does that affect your character and stuff like that? And then also just, again, like I said, just the trying and failing every day, and it's okay. That was something, that was a big learning experience for me as well. There are a few negatives inevitably as well. It was a very small class of only about 20 to 22, I think our class was told, and that includes directors and playwrights. So it was a rather small class. So you're locked with these same people for 3 years in a very intimate space. Inevitably, emotions can run high and there can be frustrations, and hopefully you can work past it. But like, it was a very emotionally charged 3 years. But I will say, in the best way, I approached it in a way that maybe I had never approached school before, because I really wanted to be there. In high school, I didn't want to go to history class. No offense to history, but it just wasn't my jam. I had perfect attendance at acting school, which I like to tell everybody. And I really, truly did the work for that 3 years. Like, I dove all in on Strasberg method acting, and then going into the movement class, like I was all in. Now that graduating from there, again, this is kind of both a plus and a minus, I would say, of school. I've had to kind of learn to now find my own method and way into this, where school is like, we're going to teach you this. This is what we believe will give you success. I really think that they fostered that at our school. And now graduating, I say this to a lot of people. We talk about acting, but it is all just tools in your toolbox. Yes, deep emotional work is a tool, but so is memorizing your lines and saying them 7 different ways, like and having no emotional attachment at all. Both are tools in your toolbox. So I think when I first graduated, I did feel this pressure to like do the work that they taught me. And now I feel like I have a bit more of a grasp on what works for me. And I think it shows in the commercials, because like, that's just Jeff. That's not me trying to tap into deep emotional work. I just read the script and I was like, I know how to make this funny. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you do. So you'd mentioned Strasberg method acting. Is that a school of thought of acting?
Oh yeah. So primarily at the Actors Studio, they teach that school of acting. In the biggest, most general nutshell of what that is, you draw upon past memories or experiences in your own life, and you really let the emotions of those times, moments, people hit you, and then you bring that to the stage. So hopefully, in an ideal world, you are truly feeling emotions on stage. And it's not just, I can cry on command. It is a craft to get yourself to that level of vulnerability. But I've also learned, again, as I just said, it is simply a tool. There's also viewpoints is another technique that a lot of people use. That's a more movement-based school of thought, or something like, if you come from the Meisner world, that really is text-based and really listening and repeating words until you find new meaning in them. So it's a little bit different than it comes from the Strasberg school of thought. Yeah, it's been fun to learn these different schools over the years, actually.
Are there any schools of acting that you think are trash and that we can throw shade on?
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think so. I think they are all valid. And I think if it gets you to a great performance, then use it. And that includes someone who said, I don't use anything. I look at my text and I just improv and I just do it. I'd be like, nice. They do no homework. They do nothing. If it works for them, and the story is told, like, dude, that's great.
I respect that answer. That's a good one. And all that education that you got that clearly came to bear because in the TV series Single Rules, you got billed as Handsome Man 3.
Oh
So,
man,
yeah, that's good.
crushing it, crushing it.
How do you get billed as Handsome Man 3? What is that?
Oh man, that was a web series. Actually, I think it is billed as TV series on IMDb, but I believe
Okay.
it was a web series.
Yeah.
And they needed someone to just simply improv some lines to the leads in a bar. And the joke was I mistake the lead for a waitress because she's like turning around, like trying to like give me a drink. And I'm like, oh, thanks for the drinks. If I remember the scene off the top of my head. And I noticed that too. And when I looked at the credits, I was like, I was billed as Handsome Man 3. Like, what an honor. Wow.
I know, right? I know. So not only did your grandma tell you that you're handsome, but they thought you were handsome too. They put it in writing.
It's on IMDb.
It's official. And moving on to some of your other roles, you've mentioned Let's Leave the Planet before, and folks can check that out on YouTube. It's very entertaining. It's worth the 8 minutes. In that you played an alien that's developed an attachment to one of us talking monkeys. And
That's
I feel you got
said.
across the disconnect of how humans would see that relationship, but you had your own perspective on it. So, what was that role like for you? How did you prepare for playing someone who's not a human?
I was very inspired by Leonard Nimoy, first of all. And the reason was, and there's a line in Let's Leave the Planet where he reveals, well, it's not that I don't love you. I just don't feel anything. I'm just simply an alien. You know, he says something akin to that. And I remember that with Spock, there was a similarity that he's like, you know, I don't feel emotion. But then you start to learn it's actually not that he doesn't feel emotion. He feels emotion so strongly. It's just that he kind of chooses the logic over the emotions. If I'm remembering the lore of Spock being half human, half Vulcan correctly.
Sounds good to me.
I think it might be right.
I'll buy it.
Spock was never wooden, but he was also never like excitable. And so I remember going into this, I was like, I want to bring that. Like, we all have met that person who is just like a little more logic based, a little more blunt, maybe, but they still have great ideas. It's not that they're not a creative person. It's just like what they say things just so bluntly. That is something I wanted to bring to that character. And I think it arrived in the final performance. I hope it doesn't come off as wooden. I hope it's like he's just an alien and he just thinks a little differently than the rest of us.
While the character might have a hard time relating to us and us to him, it wasn't hard for me and the audience to relate to that character and to understand what he's going through. Like maybe he doesn't have, his species doesn't have a word. They don't have the concept of what he's feeling. And that's what I got from it. So
Totally.
bravo. Good job.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. I see that you're also in a short, and I haven't been able to find a copy of it, but Hands On, the hand model. So tell us about Hands On, the hand model.
That one, I believe, will be coming out hopefully soon. Last time I talked to our director, it was slated for this year, I think. The reason I got cast is I am actually a hand model in my career here. Like I have done it. I know. I should put gloves on. I'm taking a big risk here. But I told my buddy this, who is a director. He got a kick out of it. And he was like, you know, I've always had this idea of a hand model who gets in bad with the sharks, kind of the mafia. The way they get him back is they take a hammer to his hand. So in this short, believe it or not, I don't play the hand model. I actually play kind of the muscle. So I come up, I'm the one who grapples him and takes a hammer to his hand. I know this suddenly sounds like it's directed by Martin Scorsese, or just like it's really intense, but it is supposed to be kind of funny. And that's just this one moment that's just over the top and a little shocking. But I am excited for that one to come out. And I hope that it kind of gets out to festivals as well. I wish it the best once it comes out.
I gotta wonder though, was the person cast as the hand model actually a hand model as well?
I don't think he was, which I have always, I know, listen.
Who is this casting director? You
literally had a hand
model to not be the hand model.
I don't know. It's all about the face, I guess.
Okay. So you are a hand model. And
yeah.
Is what they said in the movie Zoolander true about the male model world, that the hand models are the ones that have all the brains?
I don't know about that. I'll say that like hand modeling is the best job on the planet. You stroll up, there's no hair and makeup. You just wear your graphic t-shirt, hold a glass like with a very relaxed hand, and then you leave. It's the greatest job in the world.
How do you get that job? What's the criteria for that?
I had a few jobs where just by luck of the draw, my hands were just showcased in the frame. There was like one where I was holding a iPad, I think is one. There's another one too where I'm like sketching, I think it was for a video game, and I'm playing like a sketch artist. I'm like drawing scenes from the video game. And I had this footage of my hands up close, and kind of on a whim, I took that footage and made just a small portfolio. It was only like 3 things. It really was not that much. And I sent it to an agency called Parts Models here in New York City, who specialize in things like a hand or like an ear for earrings. I think that's why they got the name Parts Models. They liked my materials, and through them is how I booked some of these jobs where I'm holding a 7-Up can in an advertisement. I'm holding like a Busch Light can in another commercial. It's a really wild world, but it is the best jobs of all time.
That's cool, because I guarantee you pretty much nobody watching this or making it has ever been a hand model. So thank you for letting us see just a little bit inside that
Little piece of that
esoteric
world.
world that the rest of us aren't led into.
Oh, it's wild. It's so funny. I get a kick out of every time when someone discovers that. It's like, wait, you've actually done that? That's not a joke. That's a real thing, you know?
Yeah, if you want a series of surprises, go to Jeff's website. There is a lot there. It's a good website, actually. So good job on that.
Oh, thank you.
I also see that you've got a couple movies being finished up that'll be coming out sometime in the near future. You mentioned Out in the Light.
Yes.
Then there's Grace and On Death and Dying. Do you care to tell us anything about those? When we might see them, your experiences with them?
Absolutely. I'll tackle Grace and On Death and Dying real quick. Both of those are shorts that should be coming out, again, hopefully this year. Because I'm not on the creative team for them, I don't really know exactly when you could see them, but I really love both those projects. In one, I play this professor who I think he actually like starts flirting with a student in this surreal, dreamlike scene. But I actually think it turned out quite good.
That wasn't in your actor reel, was it?
Oh, it might have been. Yeah, a piece of it.
Where
Yes.
it's like a marketing subject and you're standing at the front of a class and you tell her it's time's up.
Yeah. You have seen some
that
of
did
it.
look interesting.
Yeah. So it's like something's off with this guy. If you've seen that scene, it's like what's wrong with this professor? Something's going on here. And then On Death and Dying is directed by Chelsea, who's in Girl Soup, but this wasn't a Girl Soup project. She just needed a voiceover artist for this project she was doing. So I really hope that one too also comes out within the year, because I think that project's really great as well.
And I see that you're listed as a baritone, which I am also a baritone. So obviously you were the right choice for voiceover.
Thank you. Yes. Yes.
Because we're the best of the bass world, but you can still understand what we're saying.
That is so true. That is absolutely it. I'll tell you this though, I'll do a quick side thought there. Being a baritone and a bass in the acting world is this thing that everyone loves when they meet you. But then there's really not that many roles for you. It's more the tenors and these guys who can really just like belt and sing, and there's not many leads for baritones. So it's always been this thing where I'm like, I love being a baritone. I think this is awesome. But where are the acting roles for all the baritones? There's just not many, you know?
Man, that's tough. Well, Benedict Cumberbatch gets work.
That's true. So he's holding the torch for us, which is great.
That's right. Leading the way.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Out in the Light.
Oh, yes.
Can
I would love to chat
you
about
on
that
one.
I'd love to chat about that one briefly.
Okay.
Because that's a Girl Soup project. That is our first feature-length film. I did some acting in that. I just finished editing that this weekend. That's been a whole group thing through all of us divvying up editing duties. So it's taken, I want to say, close to 5 or 6 months to get this first edit done. So that's been a big journey for us. And then also on the day, being on the Girl Soup team, acting as producer on this film, I'm also filling holes wherever we needed them. If we needed a PA, boom, I'm PAing. If we needed someone to do art direction, I did art direction. I did a little very minor carpentry on the set too, just these very little things. So I'm very, very proud of just what I brought to that film. I'm very proud of the project as a whole. I think we all really brought our best work. But for that project, we shot it last August. It is a folk horror movie. It's a story of this mother and daughter who practice the Appalachia witchcraft known as Braucherei, which is a healing witchcraft. This is an entirely real school of witchcraft. It's the story of Rachel, who's the daughter, and she starts to realize that there's more than just this school of witchcraft. There was also what her grandmother practiced, which was hexerei, which is kind of the yin and the yang to Braucherei. Rachel is now conflicted with, do I follow my very strict mother and what she's teaching me? Do I learn this sort of forbidden witchcraft from my grandmother? And all the while, it's also revealed that their family is haunted by this spirit of guilt, called a Veit, which is this specter in, I think it's German folklore, or I should say Pennsylvania Dutch folklore. And that was a role that I got to tackle, which was really nutty and cool because they essentially put this cloak on me that made me look almost like the ghost of Christmas past, if you can imagine how that's traditionally portrayed. But where we had a unique spin on it, I think, is we had these really articulate hands that were essentially puppets. They extended my fingers out to here, and we made them look as real as we could, and I think it reads great on screen. It looks like wood. If you can imagine these hyper articulate, very long, spindly wooden hands over a cloaked figure, that was what my monster looked like. And so I got to essentially be in these scenes where I'm like haunting the cast and doing a voice or all this really, really cool stuff. It was such a blast. Now we're at the point where we're wrapping up our first cut of the film, and we're hoping to have it completely done by September and get it out to film festivals, get it out to the world, is our hope.
Awesome. Because when I was looking up the details on that and I saw that you were playing the monster, I guess, without knowing any more about the movie, you get to play the monster. And based on what you told me that you enjoyed watching while you were younger and what you still enjoy now, how cool is that? You get to play the monster and you get cool special effects to go with it.
Yeah, it is actually a dream role to be the monster in a movie. You know, it's awesome.
Exactly. And you only got to do it because you went out and put points on the board until you got here.
It's true. You know, Girl Soup really tries to cast ourselves. And then when we don't have a role for our immediate team to fill, then we'll work with friends. And usually there are no auditions. I think we've only done audition rounds for once. It was for Rachel, the lead in our film. But we really foster working with friends and working with people we trust.
So of all the performances you've given to date, can you pick a favorite one that you just loved doing more than any of the others?
And this excludes my time in school as well?
Any.
Oh, could be any.
Performance
Could be
you've
any.
ever given.
So I'm actually going to jump back to school,
Do
believe it or not, even though I'm very proud of commercials and theater I've done outside of school as well. I was the perfect age. I had the perfect look, and I was just in the right spot to play the gentleman caller in the Glass Menagerie. And I think it was just one of those things where I don't know how familiar you are with Glass Menagerie, but that role is a guy who grew up and he was kind of the funny guy in high school. And then he gets a job in radio, I think. He was starting to go through a dark period, but then found his voice in radio and found a new life and a new passion for himself, passion for living. And all of that is just bubbling underneath this character who's kind of charming and kind of funny and all this. And it just fits so closely to my personal life. I've just fallen in love with that role. And I really, really, I hope one day I would be able to play it professionally. But I do think I might have aged out of it, which is a reality too, which is a reality to acting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or he's supposed to be 21. And look, I don't look 21 anymore.
I think you could do it. Just maybe cover up a little bit of the gray and you'll be good to go.
Okay, maybe.
So writing, though, I did see on your IMDb that you've got 2 writing credits for episodes of a YouTube channel, Brainiac.
Yeah.
And there were some interesting subjects you did. Were those assigned to you? Did you pick those? How did you get into that?
Absolutely a wild chapter in my life as well was writing for these very established YouTube channels. I don't know if you saw the subs, but one of them has like 280,000 subscribers and another one had 15 million subscribers. I wrote for actually a second channel under the same parent company. I found that through a friend who was working there, and they just hire based off of you apply on Indeed. Like it's a very standard application process. And I was initially just doing voiceover for these kind of funny, kind of quirky videos. After doing it for just about a year, they were like, you know, you have a knack for it. Would you ever consider writing? And I was like, absolutely. So there I was suddenly writing the scripts to these kind of comedic videos that also hopefully are informative. I hope it kind of hit both, where it was entertaining and informative. But that channel, I don't know if you also saw, has unfortunately shut down, and it was a choice by the parent company based on kind of views. And also during the pandemic, I don't know if you remember, but YouTube went through a very difficult time with advertisers, and they just suddenly were like, we cannot hire writers anymore. So this channel that I know had a passionate fan base for those type of videos, unfortunately, they're not going to be producing content anymore. So I also was laid off during the pandemic for that job.
Yeah. But if you haven't seen his episode of What Happens If You Wake Up During Surgery, it's harrowing and educational.
Perfectly said.
And it is unfortunate that that channel went away because there is a lot of topics. It had a very large fan base, like what you're talking about, and they got views and views and views. Numbers I'd love to have. It was slick productions. It was great animation. And so you did a bunch of voiceovers for them too.
Yeah. Okay. It was me and one other actor split the duties. So I'm on just about half of the videos, which is pretty cool.
Wow. What was that like being basically a vocal lead for a big, well-established YouTube channel?
You know, it actually did kind of give me a bit of, I did feel the pressure. I'll say that. And I think I felt the pressure because I could see the views, which, again, this was back in about 2018 when that channel was really putting out a lot of content. Yeah, we would make this science video. We would want it to have a tone where it's accessible, but funny and all the things a successful YouTube video has. And then it would be like, in 2 days, it gets 100,000 views. And I was just like, I'm excited, but I also feel pressure. So I actually, I've never put this together, but I do cite that era of me creating content and doing voiceover as kind of a learning experience for just what it means for people to see your work. What is it when 100,000 people have seen your voice? You have to have a certain amount of thick skin for it. Like, you really do have to not read the comments and just be proud of your work and put it out there. People absolutely had made fun of my voice in those videos too. And there was a time when I would read it. It was a bit of growth for me to just comments, and all of that is one thing. Views are one thing. And also, am I proud of our product? And I brought that to Girl Soup projects now. So I unabashedly put out our project and say, I love it. Here it is.
Well, that's awesome that you're a major part of a very successful channel. So you've already got a backlog of work that was eminently successful. So hopefully that gives you the confidence moving forward. That went great. So the rest of the stuff, we can make that great too.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's really good. But you know, even with the negative commenters, I appreciate that they watched. However long they watched it, they clicked it. I'm glad that they did.
Yeah.
But
true.
maybe I'm really optimistic or really positive about that.
Yeah, I wish I had a bit of more of that mindset right when I first started, because sometimes they'll say something you didn't even know that it would hurt your feelings, where they say something like, he sounds like he's 57. And I'm like, I didn't even know that I had an insecurity about that. So
Is that a problem?
It's something like that where you really do have to separate your final project from these immediate comments that social media can have.
That is interesting. Of all the things to say. Do you plan on doing more writing?
Oh, yeah. I would love to write a sequel to Don't Bother the Neighbors. And I'm envisioning it to be just a bigger version of this project. Ideally, this is all just bubbling, so you're getting the inside scoop on this project, but it would be called Don't Bother the Neighborhood. And instead of a single Cthulhu monster being summoned, now it's 50 tentacles to fight off. And I'm also envisioning our lead maybe having a team of fighters to go after this monster. And it's all bubbling around in my head, so I hope that that can come to fruition. All of Girl Soup is behind it, so you very well might see this sequel to this film at some point.
I would watch it. Do y'all do any, or have y'all considered doing any Indiegogo or Kickstarter, things like that, to help crowdfund any of your projects?
Yes, we have had that conversation. We also are aware of just how time consuming and how much to the schedule you have to be with that. Like, it is a daily fundraiser. Like, you have to show people where you are in the process. You have to engage with everyone. We're very aware of what that is. Long story short, we would be open to that, but we just want to make sure that we're ready to do it properly and not just throw it out and be like, well, I really hope that they enjoy this. Like, we're going to do it right if we do end up going that route.
And if you do, I'll keep my eyes out. If you want to send me the link to whatever it is, I'll be glad to post it and get a few extra bucks for you. But since you mentioned Don't Bother the Neighbors, that was going to be my next line of questioning, because we've covered your acting, your writing, and now onto the directing. Why did you make Don't Bother the Neighbors?
I made Don't Bother the Neighbors because, one, I did have terribly loud neighbors in my last apartment, and actually in this apartment too. Don't tell them, but they can be really loud.
I won't bother them.
Don't bother them. And it had always bubbled around in my head that there was this funny idea about, if you go to tell off your neighbors, something has changed permanently, right? It's like, if you ever see them on the street, you're always that guy. This isn't a light, you knock on a door and ask for a cup of sugar from your neighbors. No, it's going to be awkward forever. And that insecurity reminded me of cosmic horror, to bring it back to kind of this genre that the HP Lovecraft Film Festival really liked, where you open Pandora's box, something is irrevocably changed forever and permanently. I loved that something so mundane could cause this feeling of anxiety, which is just simply talking to your neighbors. I kind of rolled with that idea. Well, what would be the absolute worst thing to see your neighbors doing, making all this noise? It can't be just that they're murderers. That's been done. And, it can't be aliens. Whatever. It's an alien ship. And I was like, it's got to be cultists summoning an old god. It is the penultimate thing that if you went up there, you'd be like, I should not have done this. I should not have come into this world. So to me, that was just very funny. I remember it had to have been just 2 years ago now, because the short has been done for almost a year now. I would tell people this concept and they just dug it. They were just like, that sounds awesome. It's funny. It's got a great surprise. I love your idea of a fight scene at the end. So I had the validation from people that it was a funny idea. And then from there, when it actually kind of got around to like, all right, we got to actually talk about writing the script. What are our inspirations? What's it going to look like? I've grown up with John Carpenter and Stuart Gordon movies and Jackie Chan movies my whole life. And I have had a deep passion for them. And I totally relate to what you said, which is it's not about production value. Is there a creative spark? Can I see the people behind the camera? Was it a bunch of friends? Did they see something? Reanimator is a great example of that. It doesn't look real, and that makes it better. I don't know how to explain it. All of that was always bubbling with me when I'd really starting to get into these genre pictures. I want to bring that energy to our next short film. So little things are nods, open love letters to Stuart Gordon. The pink lighting, for instance, is a clear love letter to From Beyond. But I also think with our hero kind of being a little bit cocky, just like it's just a little bit cocky, that's a love letter to Big Trouble in Little China as well. And also this whole idea of everything is normal downstairs, but once you go upstairs, something is weird. I think that also is a Stuart Gordon motif. Think about Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, which he wrote. Everything is normal downstairs, but you go upstairs and it's weird and scary in the attic. So all of that was all bubbling with this project. Oh, and clearly Jackie Chan and our fight scene kind of go hand in hand, where it's funny, it's fun, it's dynamic, it's fast-paced. We really tried to capture that. That is where this project all kind of came together. It was this spark of actual insecurity of talking to my neighbors, but then also this deep love of these genre pictures that I could talk about all day. It's such a part of my personality.
And from a literary criticism angle, you're right at home with your thought process because so many people read into Lovecraft's works this sense of social anxiety.
Yeah.
I was just in Boston. I was at a hotel waiting for a really early flight, and the guys in the room next to me sounded like they were having an Afro-Caribbean rave. And I thought, am I going to harass these people? I'm not going to sleep either. If the music had been good, I wouldn't have even cared. But I thought I'd just give it some time, and eventually somebody got them to shut it off. But yeah, what was I going to do? Was I going to go bother them? Was I not? Everybody's felt this at some point.
Oh, yeah.
Assuming you ever had a neighbor. So you're tapping into a timeless anxiety that people have. You're more brilliant than maybe you even thought.
Hey, I'll take that. Just write what you know. That's what I say.
So was it a decision from Girl Soup as a collective that, okay, Jeff, it's your turn to direct something, you're going to go do it? Or was it that you had this idea, you wanted to do it, and they said run with it?
That is a great question, because Girl Soup isn't necessarily like it's your turn, now it's your turn, and now it's your turn.
Okay.
We are actually constantly throwing ideas at each other. And I really love kind of the freedom to just speak about a project that you have bubbling in the back of your head, or an idea for a short that you think is funny. You can just bring that to the group. What I've noticed, though, is that there is this sense of energy behind certain projects where we're like, oh, that needs to be made now. And we just kind of know. For now, I think we're going to keep rolling with this idea of just, bring stuff to the table, write something, we'll all read it, and then we'll know when it's right to make that our next immediate project. But truly, we're not putting a big red X over any project. We hope to get to every project that someone has brought to the table. But yeah, it does seem to be based on kind of just like we know, which is kind of an ethereal answer, I guess.
That's good. That means y'all got chemistry and know how to read each other. You have a familiarity, so tight group cohesion and trust. That's a great thing. And I saw on your Instagram a still from the short. The quote was, "So your motivation is you're a giant tentacle." Did you really tell somebody that on set?
Believe it or not, something very close to that. And here's why. Here's a fun little piece of trivia. So the tentacle, as you can tell, is inflatable. That was how we had to go about it. We had looked at puppets. We were getting priced at $10,000, $15,000. I would love to spend that. I just simply do not have that. I would love to. And they would have been beautiful puppets. So we had to think outside the box. We were like, okay, either the movie doesn't happen, or maybe it's like a glove. It's like we make it just this big and someone can kind of like it'll just be a small tentacle. We were like, that doesn't really sell. We were really trying to bubble around what it could be. And it was Michael from our team who went to Amazon and looked up inflatable tentacles. And there they were, a slew of different sizes, different shapes, different colors. And he kind of impulsively bought one. It was well within our budget. It was maybe a couple $100. It really was not that much. The first time we blew it up, we were like, I think this is going to read on camera. I think we might have found something that is going to work. But getting it to move is the thing. because, you know, if it blows all the way up, it's too rigid. You've seen these things, these bouncy castles. It was kind of like that. So we were like, what are we going to do? What we ended up doing was I like went inside that tentacle and sewed 4 pieces of string at different areas and had them essentially these long cords, and then tied a little with like colored tape to the end. Julia, our team member, sit inside of the tentacle and in the scenes where it's moving, I'm literally yelling like, pull the red, and like she would pull red, or I'd be like, pull yellow, pull yellow. So she's in there puppeteering the tentacle too. I think it works, you know. Look, I'm not saying it has to look like photo real, but like it's moving. You know what I mean?
The fact that it was such a relatively cheap prop, I think, added to the atmosphere and the experience of the short. So I'm glad you didn't go with a more expensive, all fancy, you know, what's it, Jim Henson Studios thing. I like that it was an inflatable. I do. I really do.
I
So
think
that
I
worked
think you're
out.
onto something. Yes, that there's such a charm for what it looks like. I agree. There's something about it. I don't know.
Scrappy. Like,
Scrappy.
we know we
Yes.
don't have the budget, but we're going to make it happen.
Yeah. And I think because and here's me being the director again, but I think because all my actors played it completely straight. Like they're not like looking at it like here's the tentacle. No, like they are cultists. They're worshiping it. Raymond is scared of it. Because they all treat it real, it makes it funnier. Like because it's, you know, it is this inflatable tentacle, you know.
Yeah. Now, when is that going to become available for people to see? Because I saw it once at a film festival, but I'd like to see it again. I'd like to share it with other folks. Any idea of what kind of release that'll get and when?
Oh, thank you. That will be available this coming fall after it is completely finished its festival runs.
Good.
I did mention that the Philip K. Dick Film Festival is coming up, so we're going to be screening at the Museum of the Moving Image here in New York City, which I'm absolutely flattered and honored by that one. We're still waiting to hear back from just about 7 festivals. So as the year goes on, we'll know whether we got in or not.
Okay.
And then by the fall, we're planning to drop it on YouTube, have kind of like a YouTube release promotion about it, and hopefully get it some views on YouTube.
Great. Yeah, because it deserves it. It's such a fun short film.
Oh,
and,
thank you.
I'm glad I saw it. And what was it like directing folks? Had you directed anybody before in a dramatic performance?
Never. This was my very first time directing. So I really just had to like learn from my friends who had directed. They were very kind with me. They helped me in the pre-production process, told me what I needed to tell them. For example, I knew the concept of a shot list, but I don't think I knew how to write it out. So Michael sent me a template and was like, this is what I use when I do a commercial. Or I had some help with getting ready to go for pre-production. I also sent them inspirational videos and pictures. So I'm throwing From Beyond at them. I'm throwing Big Trouble in Little China at them, stuff like that. And then on the day, it's just one of those things you just kind of have to trust that your eye for what's working on camera is the right choice. So I treated it like I was helping a friend with an audition. Or like helping them with a tape for a commercial, like these self-tapes we have to put together. I'd let my actor run it, and then I would just give a very brief note, the same way that I'd be like telling a friend, even if it's as simple as, I remember there was one moment where Raymond goes up to the door, knocks on it, it creaks open. In his first initial take, this was his no notes version, he just enters. I watched it, and just from a visual perspective, I was just like, all right, Ray, do it again. Just give me a quick double take. That's all I need. Just like the look behind the shoulder. Again, not very method. I have to, to bring up like the method. It's like, I need you to just double take. But I love that moment in the film. It's very tonally correct to have just like a funny little look over his shoulder before he enters. And so that's kind of how I treated it. Just let my actors run it and then give a very technical note, I think is how I would describe it.
So for y'all's first feature-length film, you played in it and you've done some of the behind-the-scenes work like the editing you're talking about. If you could make a feature-length film that you chose everything about it, what would you do with that?
If you handed me $5 million right now to make a movie, what has been bubbling around in our team for a while, this feature film called Duts, which is the Norwegian word for death dive, which is a real sport where people cliff dive and then they land in a belly flop. That is the concept of this. So this is an idea we have, and we want this one to come together. It would star me and Raymond, who was in Don't Bother the Neighbors, and my character is fed up with the grind, the New York life. It is not working here. Throws a dart at a map, lands in Norway. I'm going to live out the rest of my days wherever this lands. It's Norway. That's where I'm going. So he goes there and meets what I'll call a guru or a shaman in the woods, which seems to be a recurring theme in our Girl Soup projects, I've noticed, because there's a guru character in Don't Bother the Neighbors. But these two kind of find something in each other where the guru character sees a bit of someone who just needs help, or me, do I see that maybe this guru could help me find the peace I'm looking for? But they become friends, and it's all based around the guru thinking that this character needs to learn how to dutz in order to finally find his inner peace and his freedom from the shackles of the New York grind that he was trying to escape from. We've described it as a kung fu movie, except instead of a big fight scene at the end, it'll be a big cliff dive at the end. So we're gonna have montages. It's gonna be funny. It's gonna be weird. So if you handed me $5 million, I'd be like, we're making this, and we are making the cliff diving movie.
Check my wallet, see if I'm a
You got that line
short.
around. Excellent.
You know, I certainly wasn't expecting that answer, but I'm very amused by that answer. So that's great, dude. That's great.
Thank you.
I would have never thought of that. I would almost put money, or no, I would put money on that probably being the first movie of that variety, of that subject matter to be made. So
Yes.
creativity, just all over Girl Soup. It's just y'all are on a different
We
level.
are unhinged in the best way, hopefully.
If you don't mind me asking, work-life balance. Is this your full-time job making films, or do you have a full-time job and then you do this on the side? How's it working?
I have to wear many hats to make this work. Sometimes it's catering, sometimes it's bartending, sometimes it's freelance editing, or just a random job, putting together someone's voiceover reel or something like that. I'll also then consistently audition for these commercials. In a perfect world, book one a month. It's probably more like I have a really hot month where I book 3, and then 2 months go by and there's nothing. That's probably more accurate to like what it's actually like, but we'll say I get about 1 commercial a month. And
That's
then,
good.
I'm very happy with those odds. That's pretty good. And then essentially all of our free time is put into Girl Soup and making our next project come to life, whether that's traveling to a film festival or, like I just mentioned, our assembly cut for Out in the Light just finished this weekend. So like, I mean, it had to have been maybe 2 days ago or whatever it was. I did an 8-hour editing session right here in this room with our director. Yeah, it was a long day, but it is fun. I promise you, it may sound tedious, but like when you're in the zone and you're chugging coffee and you have the director right next to you and you're finding moments, it's like time passes in an instant. And just, yeah, it's a mix of all of that to make this very strange actory life work.
Because I've seen some people trot out the line, and I don't know that they actually tried this themselves, but that an artist should throw themselves fully into it, drop everything else, move to LA or New York City, damn the consequences, make a living off the art, don't do anything else to distract yourself. I don't know about you, I like eating and I like having a place to sleep. What would you say to people who would advance that argument?
You know, did you happen to read The War on Art by Stephen Prescott, if I'm remembering his last name? I might have gotten his last name incorrect because it's been a few years. It's a very quick read. You could probably read it in an afternoon, but it's the guy who wrote, I believe it's The Legend of Bagger Vance, if you remember that film that came out. But it's his philosophy on exactly that, where he says in this book, I locked myself in my room and I wrote 10 pages a day. I stopped hanging out with friends because I named myself a writer, and I made this my life, and eventually it paid off. And I read this, and I think the takeaway I got from it is that maybe this book is kind of like the shock value, kind of the extreme to get people who aren't acting that way at all. Maybe they can implement some of this. But I'm with you. I don't think it's practical to just throw your job out of the window, to literally only start auditioning if you want to be an actor, and that's the only thing you do, literally. I think that, especially in the few years I've gotten outside of school, having life experiences has taught me more than just reading text in acting school. Like there is a reality to just living your life, becoming a full person who has great friends and is able to work and have a fulfilling job, and then also pursue the arts as well. I think that'll make you a better actor than necessarily going, again, this route of like, I locked myself in my room and I learned every monologue from Shakespeare. You know, it's like, it sounds great in concept. In my personal opinion, it's more important to find the balance between the two. Both are important, but it's important to pay your rent and have a job that supports that. It's also important to make sure you audition consistently. I don't think either extreme is the right path.
Have you met anybody that trick has worked for, of just going all in?
You know, I've met people who have kind of acted like that, and they usually burn out. That's the reality of what I've seen. And again, I'm by no means a famous actor or anything, but I've had some success here.
Right, yeah.
But I foresee that I can keep going, essentially, as long as it still interests me. But that's because I have budgeted this time to be like, this is work, this is friends, this is acting. It's not just one thing of Jeff is acting. So I have seen people who kind of just go all in and then they just inevitably end up stopping.
I hear you. And because I have a more literary background, I'll point out that Charles Bukowski worked at the post office while writing his first books. Okay. So, you know, at least one great author did that. And the people that I personally know, and it's just the people I personally know who do their art, which is mostly either literally graphic art or writing role-playing games, they're broke or they married into money. So they have the ability to do that because their spouse is taking care of the cash flow, which is fine. And they're very happily married. I'm not saying anybody's got any problems with anybody.
Oh, no. Didn't take it that way. No,
or they're broke. Yeah. You know, I don't do this for a main living. I do this for fun. And because I like talking to interesting people. And lo and behold, I asked you, hey, you want to talk? And you're like, sure. And people keep doing that. And I have a great time talking to them about it. And then some of them, we're doing stuff together. We're working on things that I'm interested in. I'm thrilled I get to work with this person because we did that networking you were talking about with the film festivals. And
I think that the openness to experiences, like an openness to chat with you or an openness to be like, I got into that film festival in Portland, Oregon. I'm going to fly there, invest a little time and meet people there. That'll serve you more than it's the start of the year. I'm auditioning 7 times a week. I don't care the project. I'm keeping my head down. No, I think living openly serves someone more. You know, that's my personal take.
You said that you grow into being a total person, a fully realized person. There's power in that. And particularly if you're trying to do any sort of performance, if you know what it's like to be there, then that's something you can draw on, like with the method acting you were talking about. But if all you've ever done is by rote recite Shakespeare, are you even going to be as good as you hoped that you were going to be?
Yeah.
But life experience, oh, heck, Harrison Ford, what was he, a carpenter before he got hired on for Star Wars?
Yeah.
And wasn't a professional actor. He was just right place, right time, right look, and could deliver the lines.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to be said for life experience, I think. Yeah. You made a good point. And now your website mentioned ramen noodles. What to you makes the perfect bowl of ramen?
So I love ramen. I have a deep passion for ramen. I can tell you the 3 best ramen spots in New York City right off the top of my head.
Feel free to plug them.
I'll throw one out real quick. If you're ever kind of in Harlem area, check out RKOC. It's on like 137th and Broadway. Just a fantastic bowl of noodles and great atmosphere. Kind of like walk downstairs. So it's like I won't say a basement, but it's like if you're looking at a storefront, it would be like one layer below on the street. So it kind of has this fun vibe. Cocktails are great there too. If I had to say what makes the best ramen noodles, it's the broth mixed with the clear passion of making a great bowl of noodles. Look, the broth is probably the most important part of your noodles, but I've also had ramen where that just kind of is like, there's something about it that just felt so formulaic, but like when they set it down in front of you and you're just like, oh, someone like loved making this bowl of noodles. You can tell. And that's my answer to perfect ramen.
Okay, so if you got a menu, what's going into your bowl on a given day?
First of all, as spicy as possible. Truly.
Okay.
And I've found these spots, if you ask, I'd like your spicy, I'd like your 20x, spicy, 20 times the spice content. They're like, sir, are you sure? And I'm like, please trust that I know what I'm talking about. I just love spicy.
Give me native hot.
Give me the hottest bowl of noodles you can. But I'll usually go for something like a miso broth, and I usually lean towards like a pork meat or something like that. That's kind of what I'm going for in these noodles.
You mentioned pork. The last fancy bowl of ramen I was just up in Marlboro, Mass with a friend of mine for a role-playing game convention, and there was a noodle shop just across the street, and I got the pork belly ramen bowl. That broth, there was quality. It had that kind of umami, full, creamy texture to it. Then all the vegetables that were in it were nice too, but that pork belly was just perfect. It was just enough bite to it and just enough give to the fat that everything went great.
Just perfect. Yes.
But I must confess that I'm largely a basic person when it comes to ramen because I eat the crap out of Maruchan ramen.
Oh, there you go.
And the beef flavor is my favorite, but most of them are good, except for there was this like roasted chicken and lime flavor that was an abomination before the Lord. I'm not.
You do the egg drop too? Do you drop an egg in there?
I don't. No. Should I?
Try that. As you're cooking, as you're boiling the noodles in the water, just drop an egg in there, let it cook right in there with your water there.
So this is Cooking with Jeff Gorcyca. And there's the first tip that you got: how to better prepare your ramen at home. Well, good. I saw that on your site and I thought, what? In search of the best ramen restaurant. Oh, I got to ask about that. And you also mentioned that you play music, and you've already mentioned piano. I've seen you play guitar and sing. What all do you play?
My main instruments are that, like both acoustic and electric guitar. I have a bass here too as well. And I play piano, although I don't have a piano here in New York City. Maybe love to invest in an electric one at some point, but I do love that as well. I songwrite and sing in my spare time. It's just something that has always clicked with me. I've always found really fun and cathartic, so I've still been doing it, even doing all this acting stuff. But yeah, there was a time in New York City where I was seen at a slew of open mics over a few years. Like I kind of like got into the scene of just finding these open mics and sharing my songs or sharing covers. And I highly recommend not only anyone who wants to play to go to a New York City open mic, but like anyone who's just like, yeah, I'll just like check this out. If you see like that there's one happening later that night, because there's a surprising amount of talent here in just New York that seek out these open mics. So it's not going to be a bunch of chumps. It's not going to be people who can't play. Like you really will be like, wow, I got this for free tonight. Just these passionate singer-songwriters. I haven't done one in a while. Admittedly, Girl Soup is kind of taking up a lot of my time on the weekends, but there was like a 2-year span where I'd playing open mics on Friday nights here in New York. I miss that era, actually.
Maybe it'll come back. And since we're on the topic of music, who's your favorite band or solo artist?
I am a huge fan of modern punk rock, pop punk in that world. They're maybe not super mainstream, but Motion City Soundtrack is probably my favorite band. I love the subject matter they tackle in their lyrics. It's a little bit nerdy. It's always about self-improvement. And yet it also they hit that kind of pop rock sound that I've always loved in Weezer and Green Day. There is a similarity to them as well. So I'd probably cite them as probably my favorite band. Yeah, no, that is my answer. I'm gonna just leave it at that. I think that is my answer.
Now I got a band to check out. I hadn't heard them before. My wife likes a lot of the more recent punk bands. She likes the old ones too.
Oh,
But things like Arcade Fire and Airborne Toxic Event, things like that, excellent bands. But recently I've been doing more synth rock and synth pop. It was just within the past year. Gary Newman, Cars fame, came to Little Performance Hall here in Pensacola. I'd heard some of his stuff that had been on the radio. I'd seen his videos, but I wasn't expecting anything particularly knock my socks off. But since he's a living piece of music history, I wanted to go see what he did. And that little dude gave the best show I've ever been to. And before then, I had 2 categories for best show. Small venue, Glenn Danzig. That dude can put on a show. Although Glenn Hansard, so the Glens are really good. Glenn Hansard of Swell Season and of his own work, also a phenomenal show. But like big venue, U2 was my favorite. All the spectacle, I love the songs. But this little dude just came out with his black wig and just knocked all their socks off. I did not expect it at all. Holy crap, that dude did it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Favorite concert? Do you have one of those?
You know, I saw Weezer in probably 2008 or something like that. So they kind of had a boom with it. They had some releases that had big singles. Pork and Beans had just come out, I think, if you remember that era. They played killer show. They played like a few of the rarities off Pinkerton, which at the time Rivers like still wasn't really comfortable playing Pinkerton songs. But we got a double encore because the crowd would not let them go. And I've seen Weezer, I want to say maybe 5 or 6 times total. They've never done that since. I've never seen another band do a double encore. But I'm telling you, there was an energy in the crowd. They would not have it any other way. And Weezer did come out and do a double encore. And it just sticks out. There was some energy in the air that brought the musicians back out. They knew they had to come back out.
I love it. And for the folks at home, if you've never been to a concert, because there's a distressing amount of people who've never been, or haven't listened to music on anything bigger than your phone, there is a real experience of the music, the sound waves moving through your body. It has an effect, a psychological effect. It moves you into this kind of sacred mental space. It can change your world. I would recommend you get out and do it, and especially for classical music, because like on the radio, it's kind of flat. It's not that exciting. But if you go to a live symphony performance, there is a different presence. So folks, leave the house, go enjoy the arts, because I'm sure Jeff had a spiritual experience at that Weezer concert. And
I did. I
At a
did.
U2 concert, I out of nowhere decided I forgave my ex-wife. I mean, it's a weird thing, but it happened and it was right and it was emotional. And you can't get that unless you go there, just like you can't achieve success unless you work for it and you put the points on the board, just like Jeff's doing, just like Girl Soup's doing. So you mentioned New York City, and that's where you're living right now, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah,
But you're originally from Kennett Square, Pennsylvania, which
that's
in
right.
my extensive research of a single Google is big in the mushroom industry. And these are like the cooking variety, not the going to outer space variety of mushrooms, right?
That is absolutely correct. Yes.
Uh, what was Kennett Square like?
Kennett is just the most adorable small town suburbia place that I've ever been to. It's just about 40 minutes outside of Philadelphia. And I always really appreciated that location. And that's kind of where my parents like settled down to raise me and my siblings, because it was never too far to go into the city to do something there, have a weekend trip to Philadelphia. But we also were a little removed from it. Also, kind of rural Pennsylvania was very accessible to us as well. Whether it was going into the Jim Thorpe area or Hawk Mountain or kind of this nature kind of stuff as well. It's just a wonderful, wonderful town. I have a lot of fond memories of growing up there and all my friends from there. And to speak on the mushrooms a little bit, we have such immense mushroom pride. It probably reads as insanity to some people. In Kennett Square, they do on New Year's a mushroom drop in the town square where like, it's exactly what you think. And it's like this giant light up mushroom that just like slowly falls right with the time. There's the mushroom parade as well and the mushroom festival. Yes, people do dress up as the giant baby Bella mushrooms. And I marched in that when I was in high school because I would just be in the band.
So you've portrayed
Yeah.
a mushroom. That's a hard role to get. Pretty much only the people that were in Matango, the Japanese horror movie. I think those would be the only ones that I could name off the top of my head that have been a mushroom. And hopefully the town has figured out how to tie that into Super Mario Brothers for marketing purposes.
They never have. And it's right there. It's right there.
And it's been there for decades.
I know. I think you're right. I gotta call it the mayor or something,
Tell them. And you could be the Grand Mushroom. You can play Koopa or Mario.
Oh, I'd love that. I'd love it.
And so you left there. Did you leave there to do that radio career, to pursue acting? What got you to New York City?
That was graduate school for me at Pace. So that was my big move to kind of leave the area. I was in radio in Wilmington, Delaware, which is very, very close to Kennett Square. I think it's only a 25-minute drive. So it was a big move for me to come up here to New York. But I have fallen in love with it up here and really have no plans to leave as of now. I really love that there are a lot of other really passionate people about film and theater up here, and it just feels like it's always bubbling in this city.
In the news, it looks like some not so happy things are happening in New York. In your day to day, are things the same they always have been? Have they gotten worse? Have they gotten better? What's been your experience?
I have gotten that question before, and it's usually from friends who are catching up with me. So I'm happy to share my experience because I do think that inevitably sometimes the news highlights one very either scary event or one thing where like you read it and it's a great headline to get clicks, but then they paint all of New York as being either very dangerous or shut down or something like that. And they make these sweeping generalizations when the truth is that yes, you absolutely should be cautious whenever you take public transportation or in my personal life. I really try and never walk around past about midnight. That's just like a personal rule. But I also understand that I'm also like a 6'1" dude. Like there's a reality to just being a bigger dude in this city. Like people will leave you alone as well. So I'm only speaking from my experience. But I will say that while there was a lot of caution right when the pandemic hit and especially the 2 years of it rolled around, I think New York has started to find its feet again, where events are happening again. People are very happy to go out in public again and get back to doing theater again and doing some of that other stuff. And I don't really think it's quite exactly what the news bills it as. While those events do happen, whether it's something that happens on the subway or something like that, I just would not say that's indicative of my day-to-day experience just on the train. It's just never that extreme, if that makes sense. I hope I'm just trying to find the middle ground of what actually New York is like with
I
that.
asked what's it like for you. You told me what it was like for you because I can't ask you to read other people's minds and pull out the zeitgeist of the city. Well, actually, if you
That's
can
true.
channel the
That's true.
zeitgeist, that would be impressive. Feel free to do it.
Yeah, yeah.
I hope to someday visit it. My wife, she's been several times and loved it. But
I think
there's,
just treating the city with respect, I think, has served me well with regards to just safety and getting around. I would hope that everyone treats it like that. And I just think that would, in my personal opinion, solve some of the problems that the
you're
news
aware of where
can
you're
talk about.
at.
Yeah,
And there's a lot of other people around. Most of them are going to be fine. There's
nailed
going to be
it.
some that aren't. And you just need to be prepared wherever you're at for those people.
Nailed it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Since you have at least a passing interest in cinema, what is your read of the current state of Hollywood, of modern cinema? Is it doomed? Is AI going to replace everybody? Can it recover? Do you already see signs of life coming back, or are we all just screwed because of our AI overlords? What do you think?
We are going to have the wildest 5 to 10 years coming up. A lot of even really interesting things just happened this year, which I'm sure you saw. I think 4 huge superhero movies bombed this year. They were not lucrative, and these were big movies.
Yeah.
So it feels like, it maybe happened later than a lot of people thought. There is this sort of burst of the bubble of these superhero movies. I think it finally happened where people are like, well, I missed the last 2, so I can't go to the next one, or I've seen this story so many times. It's just now we're on the C tier Marvel heroes, and it's just like, okay, I really liked Robert Downey Jr., but now he's not a part of it. So it's finally started to burst a little bit. What is Disney going to do? What are these big studios going to do? What is the landscape of big cinema going to be if it don't have the event of the superhero movie anymore? I'm strangely optimistic because I take a look at, and we were able to make a short that we are deeply proud of, and also a feature length that will hopefully be out by this September. And we were able to make that all within our means, all with our friends and casting ourselves, and we were able to edit from home and do sound design from home, do Foley from home. These are things that, shoot, 10 years ago or 15 years ago, it was much more inaccessible. And it's just very accessible now. Could that continue to happen with other teams like Girls Soup, of just friends who are like, I have this great idea for a low budget horror movie? Like, we could actually make that within our means now. I do kind of foresee that happening, that maybe these films will actually start to flourish just because it's a little bit more accessible to make them. But I don't know. I am very cautious of AI and what that will do to our industry, especially the recent article I read about the AI video and just like how quickly it can put together a very lifelike scene. And oh man, that's just wild how good that looks. I'm definitely watching that with a keen interest, and just I want to see how it progresses. But I do think if AI does start to take over this medium and other mediums like it, I do think there will be a recognition from audiences that are like, I am craving something made by a person. I want to seek out the production team who fosters work that is written by people and casts people. That's just my own personal take on where it could go, and we'll just have to see. Though it is a wild time to be in this industry.
Yeah, there's so much chaos going on with big studios losing money hand over fist, but you get little sparks of smaller studios putting out big hits like Sound of Freedom last year, over $200 million. I think it cost like 4 or 14 million to make. And I'm kind of being reminded of that period in the like mid to late 90s and early aughts where you had small movies that had big impact. And it was very exciting because there was a lot of creativity. There were different things happening. And I love that because, yes, it's fine to have a Lethal Weapon 3, but Lethal Weapon 4, nobody wanted to be there for that shoot. You could tell the dialogue wasn't there, so it wasn't fun. And with the superhero movies like you're talking about, the writing was just terrible because like Morbius, now I was a big fan of the comic book Morbius. I got almost every issue of it from its original run. The dialogue was just atrocious. And they had good actors. Like I'm a big fan of Jared Leto and his
Same.
music, his ability to perform. And was it Matt Smith was his villain? Those are legit actors, but
Oh
the
yeah.
dialogue was so crap
Yeah.
that no wonder it failed. Do you have any particular studios besides your own? I do have to leave that one out. That you're seeing their stuff coming out and that you think these people could be the next leaders as the old guard collapses under their own weight?
Oh, I do. The 2 that come to mind are obviously A24. Just
Yes.
they seem to foster the story that they are passionate about first, rather than will this make us $300 million? It's kind of in the vibe of their project. They really seem to go, this is a story we want to tell. And that's the driving force with them. Believe it or not, I'm a huge fan of Blumhouse. I am a huge fan of Blumhouse, who puts out the horror movies like Smile, I think they did, or
Okay.
Get Out. They do these horror movies that are successful, but also clearly come from a creative spark. Maybe the personal taste of whether you like them or not, yeah, sure, that's up to the viewer, but like it seems more often than not that they will put out just what they think is like a great horror story. So I'm a big fan of Blumhouse. I give them a huge thumbs up to that team.
I don't know that I've seen any of their stuff, but A24, that's the, I guess, established smaller studio that gives me the most hope consistently because their movies, it seems like they are fully committed to telling the story that they've got to tell. Whether it's The Witch or Hereditary, I believe it
Oh
was.
yeah.
My God, that thing was terrifying. But also The Iron Claw. Did you see that one with Zac Efron?
I didn't see that yet, and that's the wrestling one. Yeah, yeah.
You don't have to know a thing about wrestling. You should absolutely see it because just the amount of heart in this movie and the importance of family and relationships and this and that, every performance in it was fantastic. It was a 10 out of 10 from me and the wife. The wife wound up crying. I didn't cry because I already knew basically the story, having grown up watching the characters that the movie's based on. So whatever flavor they're going for, they're sticking the landing. Like The Norseman, I believe it lost a lot of money, but I loved it. It was a really
Yeah.
good movie. It did what it wanted to do. It told the story it wanted to tell. And I'm looking for more independent voices like that. And like y'all, because the two shorts of y'all's I've seen, I've been impressed by. I think, what was
Thank you.
it? Let's Leave the Planet was $800 was the budget
Oh
according to
yeah,
IMDb.
yeah.
And it was fun. It was good. It did everything it needed to do. What would happen if you gave these people the $5 million you're talking about?
Yeah.
And it looks like you are making steps to where you are going to get that because you got a feature length. That couldn't have been cheap. That had to have cost money.
Oh yeah. And our goal with that is to hopefully, but because it's also in the horror genre, to sell it to a studio like Shudder or something like that. You brought up Mr. Beast, but his model actually is something I would love to actually emulate, which is it's really not about the individual becoming incredibly wealthy. Can we just take any profit that we make from a project and put it into the next one to start this kind of motion of we can now make each project bigger and better and improve the company. It's so funny you mentioned Mr. Beast because I watch him as well. That seems to be his mantra for his videos.
Whatever he's doing is working. Who is your favorite actor and why?
So if I really had to think about my favorite actor, it would probably have to be who I would get starstruck by. Because the truth is I love a ton of actors. And I could throw out names like I actually keep being drawn to Adam Driver's work. I would just really love seeing what he's up to. Zoe Kazan is someone I also follow. I just think that she consistently puts out just really interesting work. They're kind of in my generation too, so inevitably I'm just kind of always watching people who are around my age. But it's like, who would I get starstruck by? And it's like, the answer is Harrison Ford. Like, let's just be honest. So if I don't know what I would say to him, I would want a picture, I would want everything. I wouldn't be able to just like chat with him. So that's going to be my answer. His movies have just meant so much to me over the years. So that's my
That's
answer.
a good choice.
Yeah.
I mean, other people might have different choices, but I don't know that they could pick a better choice. You know,
There you go.
the quality is there. The guy can
Yes.
deliver the goods.
Yes, he can.
Well, that's cool. And I'm gonna have to check out the Zoe Kazan. I'm not sure if I've heard of her.
She's the
But
granddaughter of famous director Elia Kazan. So she comes from very famous in the acting world, famous.
so she's a Nepo baby. All right.
But has the chops to back it up. So
That's
there
the
you
important
go.
part, right? Can you legit do the work?
That's it. That's it.
You know, you mentioned Adam Driver. I think that's as a possible like runner-up. I think that's also a very good choice because I haven't seen him give a weak performance, even in a weak movie. And arguably my favorite movie of all time now is The Man Who Killed Don Quixote because Terry Gilliam is my favorite director.
Great choice.
I just love what he does. And he had decades of problems getting that movie made. He originally had Johnny Depp cast to play the male lead. And nothing against Johnny Depp. I like him. I think he does a good performance. But after seeing it, I said to myself, I'm glad I got the Adam Driver version of this because there's just something about how he handles a role and how he chews up the screen that is a little more subtle, a little more relatable than Johnny Depp does. Thoroughly enjoyed that flick. Speaking of directors, though, who's your favorite director and why?
Oh, I'll throw a few names out, but I will say I think John Carpenter, when I look at his entire career, he just always seemed to make something that he wanted to make, a story that he wanted to tell at that time. And he always seemed to push himself too. If I ever got a chance to chat with him, I'd just love to pick his brain about where some of these ideas came from, how he put his team together to make something like The Thing. Pretty young at 31 or something. You think about that, that's like such an accomplishment for being, in your early 30s. I'm a huge fan of Terry Gilliam as well, and all the Pythons. I love them all so much. I'd be lying if I said I didn't love Spielberg. I just love all of his movies. They're an example of when I think a huge movie can also have the artistic spark. We were talking a bit about that. It really does feel like a studio and the creativity met with his projects. So I really respect his work a lot. I think Ari Aster is also a very recent example of someone where it's just like, I love following your career, and I am very excited to see what you give us over 10 or even 20 more years. He seems to put a lot of himself and his unique viewpoint on family dynamics and relationships into his movies, and they make them very unsettling. So it's really fun watching his work.
To add to the John Carpenter point that you made, it seems like each of his movies have a very distinct and very strong vision. You can't confuse them for somebody else's movie. A John Carpenter movie, you will know that is a John Carpenter movie. And they're compelling and they're weird. They're a little bit cheesy sometimes, but they work in the overall mood of the movie. Like Prince of Darkness, it's a good example.
Great movie.
There's a bunch of cheesy elements. Well, they look cheesy in the movie, but with the score, with the cinematography, with the plot development that's going on, the atmosphere that he's got, it's terrifying. It's freaking terrifying.
Absolutely. If you as the audience member can just buy into the world and just be like, I'm going to live here, it is unsettling. I think if you watched just a scene from it, you could be like, this is cheesy. That mirror is made of water. But that's not, you haven't just immersed yourself in this vision that he is putting forth.
Yeah, but good picks, man. Good picks. So I've got some standard questions that I asked all my guests. And since we're already on the movie theme, we'll stick with that one. What is your favorite movie of all time and why? And again, I am a merciful interviewer. If you can't do just one, top three, but you also have to say why.
The movie that I think got me into movies was probably The Empire Strikes Back, actually. It's just what I grew up on, and I remember the re-release very vividly, being that I'm 36 here. So these are all just times when I was just really starting to get into movies, and Star Wars was just, specifically The Empire Strikes Back, just hit all the notes of mixed music with special effects, with acting, with story, and we have this product. It wasn't just one thing is great. They all were great. And so that's why that movie really sticks out to me as just this, probably my favorite movie. I think it's fair to say. But it is almost like choosing a favorite song. It's impossible if you really, really, try and get down to it. So I'll also throw out, I'm a huge fan of, here's my pretentious answer, maybe, but I really love Mulholland Drive by David Lynch. I just think it's, again, just no one could make it but him. And I feel like his vision is so clearly seen through with that whole film. And it taps on themes that I really relate to just because I'm an actor, and a lot of those insecurities that the actors are going through in that film just feel very real. And so I'm a big fan of that movie as well. But it's almost an impossible question. I could talk about all the big movies that I love and then also smaller movies that I've seen too. But maybe I'll just stop there by giving you the big answer and then my film snob answer, I'll say.
That's fine. That's absolutely fine. And since you've already got two, let's go for a third. What's your favorite popcorn movie?
Oh, there you go. That's a great question. The one that I can just throw on, I would probably have to go with, honestly, it might be a Disney movie, believe it or not, from their golden era of the animation. I find them impeccably crafted as well. And I grew up with them. So I might actually say something either The Lion King, something like Hercules. Those movies mean a lot to me, even though, yeah, they're the kids' movies. I'm not unaware, but I can throw them on with my family or my friends, have a great time watching that era of the animated Disney movies.
A good movie is a good movie. It doesn't matter who the target audience was, as long as you enjoy it. That's what matters.
Yeah, I agree.
You already did a better job of keeping it to three than one of my other interview subjects, Alan Hammock, did. When I asked the question, he said, I know you wanted no more than three, but I have a list of 11, and then busted out a list of 11. Now, he used to be a film critic, so maybe it was an impossible question for him, but come on, man. 11.
Come on, 11. Look, I'll give you 5. No.
That was fun. No, those are all good choices. As I've touched on, that my favorite movie of all time, it's tied between The Man Who Killed Don Quixote or Gilliam's Adventures of Baron Munchausen. And I've already mentioned that before, so the audience won't get anything new out of that. But I do want to highlight a movie that I don't think gets enough credit. It gets some credit, but I don't think it gets enough credit, of creating a unique vision, a unique world, a different place, a different set of rules, and a different feeling. And that's Ridley Scott's Legend. That thing,
yeah,
holy
Tom
crap.
Cruise. Yeah.
I've recently rewatched it, like within the past year, and I watched both the Tangerine Dream soundtrack version and the director's cut version. And I wish I could merge the two, because the director's cut added so much new material that I'm like, oh, this is a different movie. Whereas the Tangerine Dream, which is the cinematic release version, is like a speed run of this, and you miss so much. But I like the soundtrack better over here, and I like the ending better over here than here. But he set out to create a whole different world, a new fairy tale, and he nailed that thing.
Yeah.
So that's my recommendation for this video to our dear friends. If you haven't seen Legend, or haven't seen it in a while, do it. Tim Curry alone will make you glad that you watched it. You might have a hard time spotting him, but when you hear his voice, you'll know exactly which role he's playing.
Wild to think that came right off of Alien as well. Like, he was in a creative
On
state
fire.
there. Yeah.
All
it's pretty wild.
cylinders.
Yeah,
As
all
hard as
cylinders.
they
That's the
could
perfect way to
go.
put it. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and I think it was either also before that or just after that, he also did Blade Runner.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Jesus, man.
It's all in that zone. Yeah.
Ah.
It's pretty wild.
But speaking of Blade Runner, to tack back just a second to the actor thing, I'm low-key thinking that Ryan Gosling might make his way into my favorite actor, because he has the best taste in roles and he keeps landing them. And I used to think he didn't have any range, but my wife told me, no, he's Canadian and he's subtle. And the more I watched him, I realized, oh, he is subtle, and he continues to wow me. And as Ken, I don't think you could have cast a better person. He stole that whole movie.
He did.
It was an excellent movie, but he stole that friggin' thing. So Ryan Gosling, yeah.
Watching his journey has been fascinating too. I remember him, he was kind of doing these indie weird movies like Lars and the Real Girl. I remember that era of Ryan Gosling.
Only God Forgives, stuff like that.
Yeah. But he came from The Notebook, which was every millennial has made out to that movie. So it's like, that's where he like came from. And it's like, now he's kind of found it's where a big studio picture and art kind of meet, because I feel like he does really bring a lot of himself and take these roles very seriously, choose the projects very, very specifically and intentionally. But these are big movies that he's in now, so it's cool to watch his journey. Yeah.
And the fact that he likes interesting movies, and I got the feeling he can make a movie get made, gives me some heart that there's going to be more interesting stuff coming out the wire. Hopefully he'll use his clout to do that.
Yeah.
Also, another question, new favorite question. If you, Jeff Gorcyca, got shunted out of this world, you weren't on Earth anymore, you were still you in all respects, and you got dropped in a world of a specific film or literary genre that you got to pick, which one would you pick to be marooned in, and why?
I'm going to say Lord of the Rings. That's what I'm going to say. I want to live in Middle Earth. I want to be a hobbit and eat pie all day. That's what I want to do. And yet there's so many wonderful choices in film. Don't get me wrong. I think being in The Fifth Element could be pretty cool too, actually. Be pretty bonkers, but it would be cool. My answer is going to be specifically Peter Jackson's vision of Middle Earth. I love that world so much.
Yeah, that's a good choice too, because it's something that you basically are familiar with. You have an idea how the place works. And if you're in the Shire hanging out, generally things are peaceful and safe and you're comfortable. A couple of my friends, they chose the Edge of Tomorrow. Like, they want to be killed over and over again. I'm like, well, y'all, what issues do y'all have to work out? And
that would not be my choice.
No. And for myself, I went with period romance, the Jane Austen verse, because I'm a military veteran. I was a military officer. I did go to the Near East on campaign. And so I think I could very well slot into that role, that archetype that could fit in those stories of the older gentleman who's lost things at war. And of course, my wife would still be stuck here, so I lost the love of my life too. And while there might be dalliances, I'll never ask another woman to marry me because my heart belongs to another. Who is she? She's in another time and another place. Like, I think I could play to those tropes pretty well. But
That is a great answer. And yes, that Jane Austen novels don't get enough love, I think, kind of in everyday conversation. So well done. Yes.
well, a lot of people have heard of Dungeons and Dragons. There's also a role-playing game called Good Society that's based on the Jane Austen verse. I've played it one time and it was so good. I went ahead and bought all the stuff they have for it, and I look forward to playing it again in the future. I'll run the thing. It's fine.
Is it a D20 system? Like, are you rolling for like talking to Mr. Darcy?
I don't remember there being dice, but there's cards and there's points you can spend to make something go your way, but somebody could try to counter you too.
Oh, that is cool.
Very simple, very elegant system. We'll want to play that again in the future.
That is
awesome.
awesome.
Any role-playing games, or you just do the video game stuff?
I also play Dungeons and Dragons when I can with some friends. It's very hard to get people together, so I wish we were more consistent, but I do love that game a lot. I have this game night I have with some buds up here. We're playing this game called The Quarry right now, which is a horror video game where you play the characters in the story, make decisions, and the video game will progress based on your decisions and give you a different ending. And you literally pass the controller based on the prompt on the screen. Now you're playing as this part of the story, and it's this person's turn. And it takes just about 10 hours to complete, so we're beating it over a few nights. But it has been that I would give a recommend to The Quarry if you ever come across that and you want a unique spin on like how video games can actually be played as a group, over an extended play.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Jeff, as we're about to part with our dear friends for now, we do appreciate you making the time to talk to us about that. Where can we find you? What do we need to plug? What do people need to know about where you are, where your stuff is, how to connect?
You can find me on social media. It's at Jeff_Gorcyca. That's Gorcyca. You can also find me on TikTok there, but I really don't post there too often. I've kind of eased off of that world. I didn't want to always have my brain blasted with short form content. You can also find me on my YouTube channel. Just search my name there. Be happy to connect over there and connect over the social medias as well. Things to plug. Don't Bother the Neighbors is still having its run. So keep an eye out if you see any film festivals in your city. We've applied to many along the East Coast here. And also to keep an eye out for Out in the Light within the year. We really are hoping that all comes together by September, and we really hope to share that with everyone when that one's done.
That's great. I'm looking forward to it. And he's not kidding. If you want to reach out to him, I went to the Girl Soup Instagram page, and that's where I connected with Jeff here. He's been nothing but courteous and talking to me and hasn't ghosted me once. It's fantastic. Connect with the people that you like. Connect with the people that you're interested in. I'm interested in what this guy's doing and what the Girl Soup's doing, and I look forward to more. So, Jeff, I appreciate it, my man.
Oh, thank you, Stephen. Thank you for the interview, and also just for highlighting not only our film, but the other films as well. Like I was telling you just before in the interview, it's really cool for you to just give them a spotlight.
Absolutely. I believe in what y'all are doing, and I want other people to know about this cool thing that I found because they're going to love it too.
Yeah.
And so, all right, everybody, have a great day. Now, wasn't that interesting? I told you that was going to be interesting. And I suspect we're going to see more from Jeff in the future. I'm looking forward to his future output. And if you'd like to get in touch with him or follow his creative works, we're going to have links to all that stuff in the description below. So do go check him out. He's a darling guy. And if you enjoyed this episode, I too enjoy it when you like and subscribe. So please do that and leave any thoughts you've got about anything we talked about today in the comments below. I check them out and I'll answer every one of them. And so, my dear friends, as we part for now, I wish you nothing but the best.